This house is mine. Get out of here. Just imagine, for a second, unlocking the front door of your seemingly perfect new family home, only to have that chilling warning echo down the hallway. I mean, it's the kind of threat that literally freezes you right in your tracks, isn't it? And honestly, it sets the stage perfectly for the terrifying paranormal case file we're going to be unpacking today. Well, today we are taking a really deep dive into the meticulously documented haunting of house number 7. We're going to break down exactly how a family's dream of a spacious, quiet home out in the countryside rapidly shifted into an absolute nightmare. As we go through this timeline, you'll see firsthand how a classic haunting escalates, from those little subtle anomalies you try to ignore, all the way to full-blown terror. All right, let's jump into Section 1, a cheap but terrifying deal, the warning signs. So, our story begins with Amit. He's a pragmatic government employee who just got transferred and relocated his family to a rural village. Like any dedicated family man, he's looking for a comfortable space for his wife Neha, his son Arav, and his daughter Dhriti. And he actually finds one, a massive, beautiful 2-story estate with a huge garden. But there was a glaring catch. The rent was a mere 5,000 rupees. Now, you don't need to be a real estate expert to know that even out in a rural area, renting a massive estate for such a suspiciously low price is basically unheard of. In paranormal case studies, a deal that feels way too good to be true, yeah, that is almost always the very first ignored warning sign. But notice how smoothly the estate agent, a guy named Ravi, rationalizes this absurdly low price. He tells Amit, "Look, the owner lives permanently abroad. They just need tenants in here to keep the property maintained. Plus, the village location naturally deters most city renters, hence the discount." And Amit, being the logical guy he is, buys this explanation completely. But his wife, Neha, she instantly gets this lingering, uneasy sensation in her gut. Her intuition was clearly picking up on something that his rigid logic completely missed. And to compound that vulnerability, Amit was a staunch atheist. So when the family moved in, no traditional housewarming prayers were conducted whatsoever. No spiritual space or temple was set up in the home. They basically moved in completely devoid of any spiritual protection. Neha, who is still feeling totally on edge about the whole thing, establishes one very strict rule for the kids from day one. Stay downstairs and absolutely do not go near the dusty, locked rooms up on the second floor. Moving on to Section 2, early strange occurrences, the escalation begins. You see, the true catalyst for this haunting wasn't actually just them moving in. It was what they opened. Neha desperately needed some space for their extra luggage, so she finally convinced Amit to have the caretaker unlock that mysterious second-floor room. When they breached it, it wasn't some grand storage space. It contained literally just an old wooden wardrobe, a busted chair, and a creepy little smattering of discarded toys pushed into the corner. Neha was immediately struck by this incredibly heavy feeling, a sense that the room had been intentionally sealed away. But Amit, predictably, he just brushes it off as the remnants of an owner who had to pack up and move abroad in a hurry. But opening that door acted exactly like breaking a seal, kicking off a rapid escalation of anomalies. Let's look at the timeline. On day 1, the locked room is opened. By day 3, Neha is watching the kitchen light flick on and off completely by itself. By day 5, she sees a distinct, totally unexplained shadow darting through the living room when she is home alone. The dormant energy in that house had officially awakened. Which brings us to Section 3, the children's terrifying truth, innocence and terror. Those subtle little shadows, they quickly morphed into direct, physical encounters. It started when young Arav came crying to his parents, complaining that the boy stole his toy upstairs. Now, notice the chilling disconnect here. Amit stubbornly insists Arav is just a little kid having vivid bad dreams. He's totally locked into denial. Meanwhile, the terrifying reality was that both Arav and Dhriti were actively interacting with two very real entities, a mysterious little boy and a terrifying old woman. This total parental denial left the children entirely unprotected and vulnerable. But the parents' skepticism was violently shattered the day Dhriti came home early from school. She walks up to the house, and before she can even ring the bell, the heavy front door just swings wide open on its own. She steps inside, and she's greeted by this amazing aroma of delicious food wafting out from the kitchen. But as she walks closer, that comforting smell instantaneously warps into the stomach-churning stench of rotting flesh. Dhriti peeks around the corner into the kitchen and witnesses a scene straight out of a horror movie. Sitting right there on the kitchen floor are the two figures, the old woman and the child. And they are actively eating this pile of black, rotting, foul-smelling mass. Driti obviously screams and completely bolts from the house. When Neha arrives moments later to find the house dead empty and the front door locked tight, the parents finally realize, okay, we aren't dealing with overactive imaginations here. Section 4. Paranormal Investigators and the Tantric Seeking Help. After Neha herself finally came face to face with these entities that very night, finding them literally staring at her with dead eyes and telling her to get out, Amit finally caves and calls in a professional paranormal investigator, Dr. Anshul Mehra. Dr. Mehra and his assistant arrive and try to document the haunting scientifically. They deploy everything: EMF meters, temperature sensors, voice recorders. As they creep toward that locked upstairs room, they detect a massive off-the-charts energy spike. But then, complete failure. In a terrifying testament to the sheer power of the entities they were dealing with, every single piece of electronic equipment has its battery drained instantly to zero. The spirits literally neutralize the science. Realizing science isn't going to cut it here, Dr. Mehra calls in Tantric Mahakalgiri, a very powerful spiritual practitioner. The Tantric steps into the house, instantly feels this overwhelming dark energy, and gives them exactly one piece of advice: evacuate immediately. But guys, in a moment of completely tragic, frustrating irony, Amit refuses. Why? Because he had already paid a year's rent in advance and didn't want to lose the money. I mean, can you believe that? So, forced to act because the family won't leave, the Tantric attempts a spiritual cleansing, but it instantly spirals into absolute chaos. He begins chanting and sprinkling holy water around the room. However, instead of purifying the space, wherever the water lands, the walls literally turn pitch black. The entities are fiercely territorial. Suddenly, objects start flying violently across the room, and these massive, explosive sounds start slamming against the walls. This wasn't a standard haunting anymore. This was a full-on war. And that takes us to Section 5, a horrifying end and an unsolved mystery. The exorcism failed completely. A battered, exhausted tantric pulls the family aside and reveals a horrifying truth. These spirits weren't just randomly haunting the house. They had been purposefully imprisoned inside that specific upstairs room a long time ago. By popping that lock, Amit and Neha had unwittingly unleashed them. The tantric barely manages to reseal the room using incredibly powerful spiritual mantras. Amit, finally prioritizing his family's actual lives over his prepaid rent, evacuates the property right then and there. But you want to know the most chilling detail? Shortly after the family flees, news arrives that the absentee owner of the house, the guy who supposedly moved abroad permanently, had died under highly mysterious circumstances. So what does this all mean? It leaves us with a massive, lingering question. What exactly was trapped in that locked room? Who was that old woman? And who was the child? Were they victims of the owner? Was that suspiciously cheap rent actually a sick ploy to lure in unsuspecting families to feed whatever was trapped upstairs? Honestly, we may never have the full answers to that. Because today, house number 7 stands completely abandoned. It is just a rotting shell sitting on the outskirts of the village. The locals? Yeah, they know way better than to go anywhere near it. Because anyone who is brave, or maybe foolish, enough to walk through those overgrown gardens and approach the front door is met with a very clear, very present message echoing from the second floor: this house is mine, get out of here. So I have to ask, what would you do if you heard that? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning what's behind locked doors.